The wind screams across Iceland's black volcanic plains, carrying snow that slices sideways like white knives. Here, winter doesn't simply arrive. It descends, heavy and merciless, swallowing daylight for months. 1,000 years ago, Norse settlers stepped into this brutal world expecting forests, timber, and familiarity. Instead, they found emptiness. No trees, no shelter, nothing but stone, grass, and cold. In a land where the wrong decision meant death, the settlers had to answer a single terrifying question. How do you build a home in a place where the earth itself seems designed to kill you? Their solution was as unexpected as it was ingenious. When the Norse arrived from Scandinavia, they brought with them centuries of tradition: timber halls, steep roofs, towering wooden frames. Their entire architectural identity depended on forests, abundant in their homeland, but non-existent in Iceland. What should have been routine construction instantly became an existential crisis. Without timber, how could they build anything strong enough to survive the North Atlantic winter? Their salvation lay right beneath their feet. Iceland's thin layer of grass concealed thick beds of peat, dark, dense, partially decomposed plant matter pressed together by time. Peat was unlike anything the Norse considered building material, yet it possessed qualities no timber could rival. It was surprisingly light to carry but heavy enough to anchor itself. Most importantly, its cellular structure trapped air, creating a natural insulator capable of holding warmth far better than wood. The settlers began cutting peat into rectangular blocks, each the size of a small loaf of bread. These blocks, still bound by their root networks, became the bricks of an entirely new kind of architecture. The Norse stacked them in a herringbone pattern, carefully angling each layer inward to prevent outward collapse. Over time, the walls grew thick, sometimes up to 2 meters at the base. Grass continued to grow on the exterior, knitting the blocks together and allowing the house to blend into the surrounding landscape like a living mound. From a distance, these homes were nearly invisible, low, earthy, and quiet. Yet they were warm, resilient, and profoundly adapted to their environment. By embracing the land rather than fighting it, the Norse discovered that the very substance threatening their survival, frozen earth, could become the foundation of their refuge. While peat provided walls, the settlers still needed something stronger for structural support. A roof, especially one covered in heavy turf, could not stand without beams. The problem? Iceland had almost no trees capable of producing usable timber. The solution arrived on the waves, thousands of kilometers away in Siberia. Storms uprooted pine and spruce from riverbanks. These logs drifted northward, became trapped in Arctic sea ice, and traveled with the slow, grinding currents that circle the pole. Months later, sometimes years, a fraction of these frozen timbers reached the warmer waters near Greenland and Iceland. When the ice finally melted, the logs were released, washing ashore along the coast. For the Norse, driftwood was treasure. Icelandic law even recognized its value. Coastal landowners had exclusive rights to any logs stranded on their beaches. Men hauled these waterlogged timbers inland, dried them in the cold air, and split them carefully to stretch every usable piece. A single strong beam could frame an entrance. Several could support a roof. Driftwood became the skeleton of the turf houses, allowing the earth walls to carry the weight, while the wooden frame preserved shape and stability. As driftwood supplies fluctuated, the settlers adapted. When wood was abundant, builders used whole logs. When it was scarce, they split beams lengthwise, creating multiple supports from a single trunk. They recycled timber from abandoned homes and imported small amounts from Norway at high cost. Every scrap mattered. What driftwood offered was more than material. It was possibility. It allowed the Norse to combine earth and wood, creating structures both grounded and elevated. Without this accidental Arctic delivery system, turf houses might never have existed in their iconic form. Nature took away the forests, but gave back the ocean. Once the frame and walls were complete, the true brilliance of the turf house emerged. Layer by layer, the builders covered the rafters with turf, creating a roof thick enough to hold heat and strong enough to bear the weight of Iceland's heavy snow. From above, the house resembled a grassy mound, almost indistinguishable from the land around it. Inside, life centered around the hearth. The fire burned in a stone-lined pit, with no chimney to channel the smoke. Instead, smoke seeped through a small vent in the roof. It darkened the beams, stung the eyes, and caught in people's hair, but it also kept precious warmth inside. The turf walls absorbed the heat during the day and released it into the night, functioning like a natural thermal battery. Even during blizzards, the inside remains shockingly warm. The layout of the home reinforced this thermal efficiency. Long benches ran along each side of the hall, doubling as beds at night. Families slept close together, conserving every bit of heat. In many homes, a byre, an animal shelter, was attached directly to the main hall. The warmth generated by cows and sheep suddenly heated the living space, an early example of passive heating long before the concept existed. Many turf houses were also partially sunken into the ground. Below the frost line, earth maintains a stable, relatively warm temperature. By lowering the floor, the Norse reduced exposure to wind and unlocked the natural insulation of the soil around them. Snow piling onto the roof became an advantage, another layer of insulation gifted by the winter itself. These homes did not dominate the landscape. They blended with it. They hid from storms instead of resisting them. In a world where survival meant harmony rather than conquest, the turf house became a masterpiece of quiet engineering, an ecosystem disguised as shelter. Though simple in appearance, turf houses shaped Norse society in profound ways. In mainland Europe, architecture was a symbol of rank. Kings in stone castles, nobles in timber manors, peasants in thatch. But in Iceland, the landscape leveled all distinctions. Whether a powerful chieftain or a humble farmer, everyone lived beneath the same grass-covered roofs. The environment made them equals. Inside, however, the hall pulsed with life and identity. It was in these smoky, glowing rooms that families told stories, recited sagas, made oaths, and settled disputes. The hearth was not just a source of heat, it was the spiritual center of the home. Before Christianity, rituals honoring gods and ancestors were performed beside the fire. After conversion, the symbolism simply transformed, but the hearth remained sacred. These homes also embodied continuity. When a turf house collapsed or decayed, as all earthen structures eventually do, its footprint was reused. New walls rose over old ones, new fires lit above cold ashes. Archaeologists today find layer after layer of occupation. Rebuilt walls, renewed entrances, and hearths stacked on top of each other like geological strata. Turf houses endured for a millennium. Even into the 19th century, rural Icelanders still built with sod because no other method worked as effectively in their climate. Only when industrial materials, concrete, steel, processed lumber, arrived did the tradition fade. Yet the logic behind turf houses never disappeared. Modern eco-architecture borrows heavily from these ancient designs. Green roofs, earth-sheltered buildings, and passive heating principles all echo Norse ingenuity. More than dwellings, turf houses were cultural anchors. They fostered community, preserved heat, and embodied resilience. They were monuments not to power, but to adaptability, the quiet strength to endure any landscape, no matter how unforgiving. The turf houses of Iceland stand as humble reminders that survival is rarely about overpowering nature. Instead, it is about understanding it, listening to the wind, reading the land, and shaping shelter from whatever materials the earth is willing to offer. The Norse settlers had no forests, no stone quarries, and no abundance of resources. Yet they built homes that kept families alive through some of the harshest winters on Earth. Their achievement was not grand or monumental. It was thoughtful, patient, ingenious. They turned soil into walls, driftwood into skeletons, and fire into the heartbeat of the home. Today, the grassy mounds scattered across Iceland may look quiet and unassuming, but within them rests a legacy of adaptation that still inspires architects, historians, and storytellers. The Viking turf house is more than architecture. It is a lesson carved into the land itself.